Alrighty, so as promised, today we are looking at this historic bad start to the season that the LA Galaxy has had, as not only the fact that the Galaxy have now gone the longest to start the season without a win by a defending MLS Cup champion, they are now outright have gone the longest without a single win by any MLS team in MLS history. The previous record was actually tied last week between them and Montreal and also the Colorado Rapids back in 2019, but because Montreal did get a win against NYCFC and the Galaxy. Yeah, you don't have to remind Galaxy fans what happened this previous weekend against the other New York team. They are now become the first team ever to start the season 12 games in and still have yet to register a win. And while I'm going to talk about in terms of the result of this season, I'm not going to go too deep into it because I kind of already mentioned it when I did a video about the Galaxy and Montreal, the last two teams to not win a game and who most likely is going to break that duck, and also look at the next five games as well. I'm really going to go deep in terms of talk about what in the world has gone wrong with this team. How in the world did this team being an MLS Cup champion just a couple of months ago and being at the top of the mountain to just completely tumble down to really just bottom in a span of just 4 months? And I know people will say, well, it's because of the MLS Cup tax that they had to pay and that they had a lot of cap restraint that they unfortunately did had to sacrifice some of the talent that they have. But even then, with the cup taxes that they have to pay and the salary cap that they're kind of being restricted, there is definitely more to the bad start that this season. I remember I mentioned before that yes, I know the Galaxy are hampered because of the salary cap restraint. And also, let's not forget that the injury bug has really been hitting this team hard. You know, this past week in that 7-0 thrashing to the head against the Red Bulls, they didn't have the killer peas at all, and they really don't have all three of the killer peas at all this season. With Ricky Pooch still not back with this team, and looking at the state of this team, even if Ricky Pooch did play, I mean, I don't know if that really makes a huge amount of difference to the team. Consider, even when they had two of the free killer peas and Peck and Paintsville back in this team was still kind of look like what they are throughout the season. A team that just simply cannot score and also cannot defend. I mean, besides the 0-3-9 start to the season with 3 points, they've only scored 8 goals this season, which is the worst in the Western Conference, second worst in the league. Only Montreal has a worse goal scoring mark than the LA Galaxy, but the 28 goals they conceded this season is the worst in MLS. And I hate to beat the dead horse about the LA Galaxy because you always hear me talk about this team simply always have problems when it comes to the defensive issue. It's been a problem that has gone through pretty much almost half or a decade now for this Galaxy team. And just as we thought, maybe they fixed it last season because last season they definitely had some stability on the defensive part. Yep, and this season happened. It feels like it's Groundhog Day all over again, with this team just simply cannot keep the ball out of the back of the net. And then, of course, the goal differential because they have such a bad goal allow record and goal score record. It's no surprise their goal differential is absolutely horrendous. Already minus 20 when we're 12 games into the season, and by far the worst in MLS so far. In fact, if we look at the pace that the Galaxy are going right now, they are on pace to what? So far we're 12 games into the season, so we're a little bit over a third in the season. They're on pace of only scoring 20 goals so far this season, which is going to be among one of the worst in MLS, if not the worst. And then in terms of the goal conceded, they're on pace of actually hitting about 70 plus goal conceded, which is actually not as bad as I thought it would be. Considered last season we saw the Quakes conceded 70 plus goal and actually broke the record for the most goal conceded, though I think the Galaxy are still on that pace. But in terms of goal differential, they are on pace to hit like minus 50 or something like that. That could be an ugly goal differential to a point where that might be the worst in MLS history as well. Now, looking at the notable winless start to the season, because, besides talk about the misery that the Galaxy has had, I want to kind of look back in terms of teams that have also got off to a terrible start to the season as well. Because one thing I will say about the Galaxy, as much as this bad start is, at least they have some points because there are actually teams that are pretty close to this part of the season where they didn't even get a single point whatsoever close to this part of the season. But some of the most notable winless start to the season. We talk about the 2023 Sporting KC side. That team won 10 games without a win to start the season with an 0-3 and 7 record and had 3 points. They finished eighth in the West and made the playoffs. I probably also should have mentioned the Sporting KC side of this year as well because they also gone through a bit of a stretch without getting a win, and even TFC as well. This season, for whatever reason, we have a lot of teams that did not get their first win until really late into the season, much later than I think it is. I could have easily put a lot of team up there, but I'll just mention the Sporting KC side that started the season with 3 points, and this is a team that did the impossible in terms of making the playoffs, despite the fact that they start the season with just 3 points. Had an incredible second half of the season, and eventually made the playoffs, and even won a playoff series against their hated rival St. Louis City. And really, I think that's kind of an outlier because when you're this deep into the season without a win, it is pretty clear that even with the expanded playoffs that we have right now, you're definitely thinking that there's no chance in terms of you making the playoffs, even as expanded the playoffs is right now in MLS. And then of course the 2025 CF Montreal, of course I got to bring that up because they were a team that looked like was going to join the Galaxy in terms of having the longest winless run to start the season. Started with 11 games with an 0-3 and 8 record and only have three points up to this point. They of course now got 6 points because they got that win against NYCFC, and of course I put a question mark there because this is the current season. Though somebody tells me they're probably not going to make it to the playoffs, let alone maybe not even finish near the bottom three in the Eastern Conference. Then we look at 2019. This was the team that was the team that had the longest winless run before Montreal and Galaxy equal that mark last week, where they start the season 11 games without a win with an 0-2 and not nine record and finish with 2 points. And that team actually finished respectable, at least in the Western Conference. I remember that was the year wasn't Connor Casey basically stepped in to for this team and really kind of got this team back on track and at least finish with a respectable season, because with the way that they only have 2 points to their name, you wouldn't think that they would came anywhere close in terms of finishing pretty close from the playoff position. But for the Rapids, even though they weren't really that close in terms of finishing in the playoff position, the fact that they were still able to finish ninth and not anywhere close to the bottom of the Western Conference just to shows you that yeah, there could be a chance where you could turn things around, maybe finish the season respectably. Just it's not going to usually happen with a lot of teams. And then we look at some of the worst start to the season, not only in terms of being winless, but also just not even getting a single point. So we look back the 1999 Kansas City Wizard team. Of course, this of course is Sporting KC before it was rebranded. But the Wiz, they started the 1999 season 7 games without a win with an 0-7 record. Now I also had to kind of dig deep to see does that include in terms of shootout losses, because back then, we still did it the shootout after the game is draw, and I think they probably had a couple of shootout losses. That is the reason why the record is 0-7 and currently only have 0 points. And of course, that season they surprisingly finished dead last in the league East and finished in 11th place out of 13 teams in that season. And then in 2012, we saw Toronto FC, and for TFC fans, I know that it's been a rough last couple of years for this team, and it's almost like these last couple of years for TFC is kind of a little reminder of the early TFC days, because before TFC really kind of dominated in the middle of the 2010s, this team was just an absolute tragedy to watch. I mean, the 2012 TFC side not only finished dead last in the league and won the Wooden Spoon that year, but they started the season 0-9 with 0 points. They started the first 9 games without even getting a draw to their names, and to this day, it is the longest that any MLS team have gone to start the season without recording a single point, and a mark that I'm pretty sure it's going to be pretty hard to try to replicate. But yeah, that was a team that just kind of reminds you the early days of TFC, of all the bad decision that they made and all the bad signing, kind of similar to the current TFC side right now. And yeah, they, like I said, they finished dead last in the league, win the wooden spoon, and it feels like maybe the Galaxy are on point of doing that as well. Though again, there's some competition considering the fact that we talk about bad teams. CF Montreal is another team that has kind of got off to a bad start, and even TFC themselves have kind of not got off to a good start as well. Now, looking at stats last season compared to this season, so I kind of want to compare to see the drop off between last season, at least on the attacking in terms of goal scoring and assist chart. And one of the reasons why they are the worst in the West and second worst in the league in terms of goal scoring is that they really heavily rely on the killer P's, and also a guy that played in that number 9 position that no longer play for this team because of the cap restraint. But in terms of last season, the top goal scored was Gabriel Peck. He had 16 goals last season. And coming into this season, we knew that he's going to have to do a carry job. Consider two of the killer P's were not available, at least early in the season. And yeah, it's safe to say that he really missed those guys, because he have only had one goal so far this season. That came all the way back in the second week of the season against the Vancouver Whitecaps, and not to mention he's currently injured. Then you got Dejan Joveljic. He was the 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 guy that is kind of the forgotten piece when it comes to this attack, because we all talk about the killer piece with Peck, Puig, and Paint. So people forget that Joveljic was a huge part of this attack as well. Scored 15 goals so far this season, and now with Sporting KC, he has five so far this season, and started to get going too, because he actually got off to a slow start with Sporting KC as well, but recently he started to pick up form as well. And this again, we when we talk about what has wrong with the Galaxy, and in terms of the cap restraint as one of the biggest reason, I think this is where you can clearly see where they had no choice. They couldn't keep Dejan Jovic in terms of the cap situation. They had to let him go. It's a very unfortunate situation, and because of that, they lose a really big piece, at least on the attacking end as a result of it. And then of course they so far do not have Ricky Puig, or at least for the majority of the season. Of course, he torn his ACL in that Western Conference Final. He scored 13 goals last season. Obviously, haven't scored a goal or made an appearance. Still recovering from that torn ACL injury. And then we look at Joseph Painto, who start the season injured as well, and haven't really played a lot of minutes before now being injured again. Last season he chipped in 10 goals, still have yet to register a single goal. And then besides the killer P's and also Dejan Joveljic, the only other guy that really contributed goal scoring is Diego Fagundes. He had 4 goals last season, only one to his name so far this season. Now looking at top assist leader compared to last season and this season, so obviously when you do not have Ricky Puig, who is really the instrumental playmaker of this team, yeah, it's no wonder why the goal scoring also have kind of been falling apart. I mean, when you look at this team, not only they don't have the goal scorer and the finisher to do so, they just simply don't have the guy to give the ball to those potential goal scorer as well. And this is where again, having Ricky Puig, that might be important as well, especially when he getting himself back to competitive edge. Um, he had 15 assists last season. Of course, so far hasn't had a single assist because of him being injured. And then you got Gabriel Peck with 14 assists. He was supposed to be the guy that maybe was the playmaker of this team, but then again, as I mentioned, he was the guy that not only had to be the playmaker but also the goal scorer of this team, and that's usually hard to do. Even with the year that Gabriel Peck had last season, but so far only 2 assists, and it's actually time with 3 players on the team in terms of the top assists this year. And then you got Josep Painto. We know how dangerous he was last season, especially on the wing with 10 assists. So far this season, only 1 assist to his name. And then we also look at the 2 other guys that's no longer with this team anymore, with another team. And we start off with Mark Delgado. And as I'll mention, when it comes to the notable transfer, yeah, this is where I'm definitely gonna mention Mark Delgado. Probably the biggest mistake that the Galaxy made this offseason when it comes to trying to get themselves under the cap restraint while sacrificing some great players, because we know that the loss of Ricky Puig is already big, but I feel like last season, even when they lost Ricky Puig, the reason why they were still doing well is because the present that Mark Delgado provide was instrumental for this Galaxy side. And last season he finished with 7 assists, already free with LAFC, and it already looked really good for that LAFC midfield as well. And then you got Dejan Joveljic so far for haven't registered a single assist with Sporting KC. He's not really a guy that's known to provide assists, but he did end up with 6 assists last season as well. Now, looking at the top goal scored so far this season, really this is the only player that you can maybe say that kind of turns out to be good. And I say kind of because Christian Ramirez leads the team with 4 goals. He's really the only goal scored, and even then, he's been a little bit inconsistent so far with the Galaxy compared to what he was last year with the Columbus Crew. And then you have a bunch of guys with only 1 goal. You got Marco Royce, Gabriel Peck, Emmanuel Garces, and Diego Fagundes. Top assist leader, you got Gabriel Peck, Miki Yamane, and Miguel Berry with 2 assists, followed by Christian Ramirez and Marco Royce with 1 assist. Now, let's talk about the notable transfer, and this is where I'm really kind of gonna break down in terms of some of the biggest mistake that Will Kuntz, the GM of this team, made. So, the first player that they of course brought in, or at least one of the more notable player that they brought in, was Lucas Sanabria. Now, this player was supposed to be the replacement for Mark Delgado, and there was a lot of hypes around him being a good replacement for this team. Yeah, it's safe to say that he has been a bit disappointing so far. Hasn't There's been times where he's been haven't been playing with this team, having and also haven't started as well for this team in some of this game. And some might say that with the way that him coming to a new country and adjusting to a new league, that of course would be the reason why he's off to a slow start. And we usually see that even with other team as well. But still, even with that and with the expectation that he was being put on, it's been very disappointing to see how he's been commanding that midfield, and they better hope that of course would work out. And then of course they also got Elijah Winder, who I don't think he's actually on the injured list because I haven't seen him play for the Galaxy in quite a while. He was a guy that actually did so well that was kind of the reason why they decided not to continue to keep Sean Davis and decide to buy out his contract, which I think that's also kind of a very strange move as well that I'll get to in just a bit. But yeah, he was a guy that actually did pretty well, at least in the beginning, but really just kind of wither away, almost kind of end up in the Greg Vanny doghouse, not really getting a lot of minutes for this Galaxy team recently. And then of course I already mentioned about Christian Ramirez. Out of all the players that they've got last season out of the transfer window, Christian Ramirez is basically the most successful one, and that's saying something. When, as I even mentioned, yes, he's scoring the goals for this team, but he's definitely not doing at a rate similar to what we see with Dejan on Joveljic. And then of course the Sean Davis one, we talked about some baffling decision. This was definitely one of them. Not because of the fact that they decided to get rid of Gaston Brugman. You just kind of had a feeling that they had to do it because of the cap restraint that and the fact that Gaston Brugman was almost kind of relegated to a third or fourth line midfield depth player. They just kind of had to maybe get rid of him and maybe get some gam out of that. And they did get some out of that. But what's kind of interesting is that they also decided to get Sean Davis, who also took up some of the cap space on this team. And then they realized that, oh boy, it seems like maybe we probably shouldn't have got him in the first place because we are already in a cap strain. So what's kind of really confusing is why would you decided to get rid of a guy that is already taking up a lot of your cap space and trade him to another team, and then bring in a guy that also basically take up some of the cap space on your own. That's a move that I think I'm kind of surprised not a lot of people have talk about this, and I'm pretty sure Galaxy fans have mentioned it how that this move just kind of doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I mean, I can understand why Wilcox did this in the first place with the way that he was hoping maybe he can replace Gaston Brugman and get Sean Davis, who can also be a good depth piece for this team. But at the same time, did he not realize the fact that Sean Davis, in terms of the cap space that will take with this team, is almost similar to the cap space that Gaston Brugman put? So because of that, it was no surprise that they decided to buy him out after a month. And in the end, if that was kind of the case, and you got to also remember they didn't get a lot back even with the Gaston uh Rootman sale. I just kind of feel like if they just send Gaston Brugman to Nashville and actually decide to get some game out of it instead of getting Sean Davis as a package as well, I feel like that would have been a better move compared to what they just did, because it just makes no sense for them to decide to trade one of the player that took up some cap space and then decided to get another player that might seem as a replacement in the beginning, but he's the guy that was also going to eat up your cap space. So if that was the case, you might as well just not even have have to trade Gaston Brookman in the first place. You might as well just keep him in the first place because it makes no sense to decide to bring in another guy that take up similar cap space that you don't really have, and then eventually kind of exercise a buyout as a resort, and really kind of waste a buyout as a resort of that. And then the other notable transfer, we got Zanka, of course, coming into this team. Yeah, he's been a huge disappointment, and this is something that I think for the Galaxy. I've also seen that they have decided to get some experienced defender on this team. They have known to get some experienced defender that play in bigger league as well. We know Zanka has done it in the Premier League as well, but so far when you see that happen, it just hasn't really quite worked out for this team. We saw with them bringing Caceres in. He was okay for a bit, but not really that good. We saw them with Yoshida as well. He's been okay as well, but not as good, or anywhere near the top level as in terms of being an MLS defender. And it just feels like they make the same mistake here again. I feel like they're thinking in terms of trying to build the defense, and I understand you want to get some veteran present at the back, but if you're getting these veteran present, especially with the way that they're near the end of their career, or in the downward trend of the career, as what we see same with Caceres and Yoshida, and now seems like we're seeing the same thing with Zanka. It just feels like that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It feels like they just made the same mistake that they did before. Where yeah, we know it already doesn't work when we decide to bring these experienced players coming out of a European league. So why in the world did we decide to do that again this off season and hope that this time it will work? And then, of course, the other player that they, of course, got was JT Marcinkowski and Mateus Nascimento. Marcinkowski was more bought in as a third choice goalkeeper, and Nascimento, of course, haven't really got a lot of minutes for this team. He only started to get some more minutes coming in in these last couple of games, so it will be interesting to see how he's gonna do as he's maybe starting to get more minutes for this Galaxy side. Now, looking at the players that they got rid of course, Dejan Joveljic, that was a big part because of they wanted to get under the cap restraint. And then of course they also got rid of Jalen Neal, who Jalen Neal he hasn't really done so much for Montreal, but maybe that's because he's been injured as well. So that move maybe kind of makes sense. What didn't make sense is get rid of Mark Delgado, and I think I already mentioned this before, and this has been the biggest talk point of the biggest mistake that the Galaxy made this offseason. Getting rid of Mark Delgado, but keeping Marco Royce. I feel like they should have got rid of Marco Royce in the first place. And I get it. Marco Royce is a big name and is going to get butts to the seat. But what did he did last season? He didn't do nothing last season. And even in the playoffs, he didn't do much. And let's also not forget, he's another guy that has kind of been bit of a problem in terms of the injury crisis that this Galaxy team has had, where they just simply have had guys that has been in and out of the lineup. We know Marco Royce is a player that's been injured a lot throughout his career. So why in the world did you decide to do that? Especially with the way that it just feels like he's kind of more getting toward the twilight of his career to a point where he just doesn't have it anymore. Instead of keeping a guy that has been really solid for you in the midfield and have also looked very solid for LAFC so far this season. And then the other two players, Martin Caceres and Gaston Brugman, those one kind of makes sense, but I already mentioned about the Gaston Brugman and Sean Davis trade, how weird that trade turns out to be. But the Martin Caceres one, that kind of makes sense because he was just getting all and there was no way that they were going to bring him back as a resort. Now, looking at so far this season, I'm gonna kind of breeze by this because I already mentioned it but before, so there's no really too much reason for me to kind of lamber again in terms of some of these resorts that they probably should have got. But the first game of the season they face against the new boy San Diego FC, they lost that one 2-0. Then they lost Vancouver 2-1 in that one before losing 3-0 at home to St. Louis. Then they got a 1-1 draw against the Portland Timbers, got a 2-2 draw against Minnesota. This is kind of when, you're thinking maybe the Galaxy can turn things around because they've actually been playing much better. Even in the St. Louis game, they play relatively well in that one. But then they lose 2-0 to RSL. And then they got a 1-1 draw against the Houston Dynamo, got a 1-0 loss against Austin, and then losing 4-2 to the Portland Timbers at home. I think after that 1-1 resort against Houston, this is when the snowball really started to pile up in terms of them going to a complete free fall, because on May 4th, on Star Wars Day, they become the first MLS team to lose a game despite holding their opponent with 0 shot. And if you think that wasn't painful enough, the very next game they would get absolutely smacked by the New York Red Bulls in a rematch of the MLS Cup. 7-0 was the result of it. Now looking at the next 5 games, remember how I said the fact that I have a confidence maybe the Galaxy can snap out of it when I did that video looking at them in Montreal of who's going to be the first team to end their winless run. Well, looking at these next 5 games, I don't think this winless run is going to come to an end anytime soon because they get to face against the Philadelphia Union, who is second in the Eastern Conference and look class so far. Then they, of course, have that El Trafico game. Again, I've said that game might be a chance for them to redeem themselves because you obviously have to be up for it for an El Trafico game. But even then, if that is the case, I mean, with the way that how LAFC has been playing much better, I don't know that even with the factor of and the unpredictability that El Trafico bring, that might be the game that you could say that could end this winless run. Then they go on the road to play against San Diego FC, who has been playing really well so far or this season. Before they got the Cali Clasico against the San Jose Earthquakes. The Quakes have also recently been playing relatively well as well. And then they have a home date against Real Salt Lake. That is probably the most likely game I could say out of all 5 of them that could actually end up the winless run. So they could get to a point where they might go even 15 games without a win to start the season, and might even go half of the season without a single win. Yeah, I mean, it's just been an absolute disaster for this Galaxy team. And like I said, I know people will blame on the injuries, and I know people will blame on the rules kind of really put the Galaxy in this part, and maybe the roster building that Will Kuntz built uh kind of put them in this spot as well. But I also think that talk about Will Kuntz, the decision that he made this all off season to navigate it. I don't think he has done a really good job. In fact, I feel like he done a really poor job in terms of it. And then let's also not forget in terms of the underachieving that is going on. Yes, I know no without the killer keys this team is not the same on the attacking end, but even then, you expect somebody eventually is going to step it up. And especially going back to the roster building, if you know that some of your killer piece is not going to be available, Will Kuntz should actually maybe think about trying to get some short term solution to fix that because if he didn't do so, it's no wonder why you're in the situation that the Galaxy are in. And then of course on the defensive part, again, it just feels like it fall apart again for this team. It's almost like this team I've already mentioned so many times. No matter what they do, they're just kind of stuck in this hamster wheel of being a bad defensive team for a decade now. And really, the last season was almost kind of a little bit of an outlier, and maybe big reason why it was an outlier it is because the attack was so potent that it really mitigate some of the defensive flaws that this team has had. So overall, if you're a Galaxy fan, let me know in the comments below what do you think of this video. And again, this is a pretty deep dive in terms of just what has gone wrong with this team. Why are they in this spot besides the obvious reason of them being in a cap restraint and even maybe suffer that MLS Cup hangover from last season. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.